The airfield prepared for its toughest test. Lead pilot Ava Hartley, known for discipline and a flawless record, strode from the briefing room. When ATC announced co-pilot Ethan Cole, Ava froze. Ethan appeared in worn gear, boots scuffed, hands stained with grease. Ava's voice was ice. "I won't fly with him. A single dad juggling childcare is not focused." Laughter ensued. Ethan bowed his head, tightening his helmet, used to judgment. A young pilot snickered. "Single dad with Hartley? Hilarious." Ava turned away. Ethan then spoke, his voice low and sharp, silencing the hangar. "If you knew who I was, Captain, you wouldn't say that." Ethan Cole, 36, navigated a life defined by quiet sacrifice and relentless exhaustion. He and his 8-year-old son, Liam, lived in a small, utilitarian apartment on the outskirts of the base after his wife passed away 3 years prior due to sudden medical complications. His days were a tightly orchestrated ballet of duties. Ethan's primary visible job was an aviation maintenance technician at a private hangar. His secondary unofficial one was flying contracted hours to desperately maintain his critical flight certifications. His world revolved around Liam's schedule. School drop-offs, hours of demanding maintenance work where he sweated beneath massive jet wings, late-night flight simulator practice sessions, and often sleeping on a worn cot in the hangar office to save commuting time and money. The irony was palpable. The man repairing multi-million-dollar jets was sleeping in the back of the shop he was meant to clean. Despite the punishing schedule and deep fatigue etched around his eyes, Ethan was fiercely devoted to his son's stability. Liam's lunchbox was always packed with care, featuring small, carved animal shapes that only a loving, present parent would bother with. His school uniforms were always clean and pressed. He never showed Liam the anxiety, only unconditional love. Liam adored his father. The boy always carried a worn paper flag in his backpack, scrawled with the proud title, "Dad is the world's best pilot." This simple, heartfelt declaration was Ethan's true compass. What the Northridge crew didn't know, and what Ethan deliberately concealed, was his past. Ethan had been a senior private aircraft test pilot, one of the industry's top guns, responsible for signing off on multi-million-dollar jets before they hit the market. He was brilliant, uncompromisingly skilled, and commanded a 6-figure salary. He stepped away from that high-stakes, high-travel career immediately following his wife's death, prioritizing proximity and stability over prestige. He needed the constancy of a ground job for Liam. He needed to be physically present, because he never flaunted his history or his qualifications. Everyone, from the lowliest cadet to the senior commanders, simply assumed he was a technician trying to fly again from scratch, a man struggling to claw his way back. In stark contrast was Ava Hartley. She was the absolute picture of the perfect modern pilot, military-trained background, holding the top performance rating for 3 consecutive years, dedicated to absolute discipline, and totally devoid of visible personal emotion. Ava saw the cockpit as a sacred, sterile place, intolerant of any distraction. This rigid worldview wasn't arbitrary, it was born from trauma. Years ago, Ava witnessed a catastrophic incident where a co-pilot, distracted by a sudden, severe family crisis, lost focus for a mere 3 seconds during a complex emergency landing. The result was a devastating crash that cost the life of her most trusted friend, the lead pilot. The memory was burned into her mind, the fleeting moment of personal preoccupation that resulted in professional catastrophe. She had testified under oath that personal issues had no place in the air. Because of this, she trusted no one who carried personal baggage, viewing emotional distraction as a lethal flaw. When she saw Ethan, the worn clothes, the obvious exhaustion, and the inescapable knowledge that he was a single father with paramount family responsibilities, her past trauma immediately surfaced. She dismissed him as a risk factor, an unacceptable variable in the equation of flight safety. Her refusal was not personal cruelty, but perceived professional necessity, a shield against reliving her trauma. The flight team's response was immediate and cruel. Whispers followed Ethan like exhaust smoke. "Ava's right. Who can fly safely with someone like him?" Ethan heard the snide comments, the open judgments about his perceived poverty and instability, but he maintained his silence. He had chosen this path. He simply retreated to a quiet corner of the maintenance hangar, sitting alone. He stared intently at the crayon drawing Liam had given him, silently repeating his mantra. Keep going. For Liam, their words are just noise. One late afternoon, Ava found herself inadvertently softened. She walked into the crew lounge and saw Ethan sitting not with charts, but with Liam. The boy was giggling uncontrollably as Ethan, his massive, grease-stained hands surprisingly dexterous, taught him how to fold a perfect paper airplane. The plane wasn't a simple dart, it was an intricate aerodynamic glider. The joy on Liam's face was pure, and the look of deep, protective affection Ethan returned was a depth of love Ava had never personally known. It was an image of simple, unshakable family warmth. Ava suddenly felt an unexpected, awkward tightness in her chest, a reminder of the isolated life she led. She quickly backed away, the scene haunting her. The first act closed with a concrete sign of Ethan's hidden life. Ava, observing Liam leave the hangar, noticed a tiny old ID card tucked into the visor of the boy's miniature flight helmet. It bore an official-looking corporate logo and the name Cole Air Holdings. The logo was stylized, depicting a phoenix rising over a globe, a powerful global symbol. Ava didn't recognize the company name, but the formality and the high quality of the card seemed oddly out of place for a technician's son. She felt a flicker of doubt, a nascent question about the man she had so quickly judged. The following morning, the flight crew met for the pre-flight briefing, and the tension surrounding Ethan was palpable. Ava, unyielding in her professional assessment, formally proposed replacing her co-pilot. She felt morally obligated to protect the squadron from what she perceived as a genuine emotional threat. A senior officer leaned forward. "What is the reason, Captain Hartley? Has Cole done anything wrong?" Ava met his gaze with a cold, clear stare. "He does not meet my standard of operational focus. In a high-stress environment, I require absolute, uncompromised attention." Every eye in the room pivoted to Ethan, pinning him like an obstacle. A particularly arrogant young pilot, Lieutenant Reynolds, fresh out of flight school, let out a loud, contemptuous laugh. "He can't afford a decent pair of boots. How can he fly alongside Captain Hartley? He should stick to fixing the jets, not flying them. We need pilots, not charity cases." Others chimed in, their voices laced with cruelty. "A single dad should focus on his kid, not trying to prove himself here. Go take your troubles elsewhere, Cole." The insults were brutal, direct, and specifically targeted his family status. Ethan remained silent, his face betraying no emotion. He had perfected the art of absorbing the insults. His only defense was to ensure Liam remained ignorant of the contempt his father endured. He often found himself praying that his son was too young to understand the meaning of scraps or charity case. The cruelty escalated later that day. Liam, excited to see his dad, ran onto the hangar floor during Ethan's brief lunch break, holding up a small, empty plastic container. A female pilot, whose personal life was notably messy, approached Liam with a saccharine smile. "Aw, pity you, little guy. Your daddy was rejected by the best pilot today because he's too busy being a dad, not a flyer." She aimed the comment directly at Ethan, using Liam as a pawn. The words were designed to wound. Liam's smile vanished. He lowered his head, his small shoulders slumping in visible dejection. Ava, watching from a distance, felt a sharp, unexpected pang of guilt. For the first time, she saw the tangible damage her professional dismissiveness was inflicting on an innocent child, a child who only saw his father as a hero. She realized her prejudice had made her complicit in the cruelty. Unable to shake the image of Liam's crushed expression, Ava tried to logically justify her stance. She pulled up Ethan's sparse official file in her office, a thin document listing only his maintenance certification and reservist flight hours. Why is this all there is, she wondered, tapping her finger on the blank space under previous high-level certifications. She desperately tried to find a technical flaw, a weak point, something to validate her fear. But his maintenance log was flawless. His repair work was meticulous, often exceeding industry standards. The lack of information was the only anomaly she could find. That evening, driven by this professional anomaly, Ava happened to walk past the flight simulator lab. She stopped dead in her tracks. Through the viewing window, she saw Ethan. He was immersed in a complex high-altitude emergency scenario, a full-engine flameout during a high-speed descent. She recognized the scenario immediately. It was a classified Level 5 test pilot sequence. typically requiring special command authorization and a biometric key for access. How did he even access that, she thought, her internal alarm bells ringing. Ethan moved the controls with astonishing precision, executing maneuvers that were smoother and faster than any pilot in her elite team. He was speaking quietly into the mic, his tone clinical, calculating G-forces and fuel burn rates with the casual ease of talking about the weather. Ava remained glued to the window, utterly transfixed. Why is his technical skill so utterly perfect? That is the technique of a career test pilot, not a struggling reservist. The contradiction was becoming too vast to ignore. The next morning, Ava observed Ethan doing maintenance work on her assigned jet, a high-performance military trainer. She watched him, not with suspicion, but with genuine curiosity. He wasn't just tightening bolts. He was replacing a complex sensor core in the hydraulic system, a delicate job usually reserved for highly specialized external engineers. He was working with a specialized set of tools that cost more than a small car. She approached him, her tone less adversarial than usual, more investigative. "Who taught you to do that? That's specialized work. I've seen contract engineers struggle with that." Ethan straightened, wiping a streak of oil from his cheek with a worn glove. His eyes were level with hers, showing neither deference nor resentment. "I taught myself, Captain, and I've built things far more complex than you can imagine. I understand this machine down to its molecules." His cryptic reply only deepened Ava's confusion and burgeoning suspicion. Ava started seeking out small pieces of information about Ethan, driven by her professional need to understand the anomaly. She checked the manifest. She checked the co-pilot assignment log. Everything confirmed he was simply an entry-level reservist pilot. The contradiction was jarring. The true breakthrough came late one evening. Ava was checking the supply closet adjacent to the mechanics area and noticed a small, unmarked steel box, Ethan's personal gear locker. Something prompted her to look inside. Tucked beneath his worn helmet, she found a sheaf of official documents marked with confidential corporate headers. The top document was an envelope labeled in bold, formal lettering, "Cole Flight Test Certification / Private Aircraft Ownership." Ava's hands trembled as she read the papers. The file detailed his high-level flight test credentials, including certifications for heavy, specialized aircraft that few pilots in the world were qualified to touch. More astonishingly, the file confirmed Ethan Cole as the legal proprietor of a private, heavy-class jet aircraft, a rare and phenomenally expensive asset. The single dad she had dismissed as a struggling technician was a man of significant, hidden wealth and unparalleled skill. Her judgment, she realized with a terrible, slow burn of shame, was entirely misplaced. The day of the live flight test arrived, stark and unforgiving. Despite the internal shift in Ava's certainty, the assignment stood. Every pilot had to fly with their original co-pilot pairing, which meant Ava and Ethan were locked into the cockpit together. Ava boarded the aircraft, her movements stiff, avoiding Ethan's eyes entirely. She still hadn't processed the file she'd seen. The atmosphere inside the cockpit was thick with unspoken tension. Ava's hands gripped the controls too tightly, her lack of trust in her co-pilot manifesting as physical rigidity. They received clearance. The engines roared, vibrating beneath their seats. As they hurtled down the runway, gaining speed past V1, decision speed, the situation became instantly critical. A loud, jarring, triple-tone alarm suddenly blared, a terrifying sound specific to primary flight control failure. The instrument panel lit up like a Christmas tree. Left-wing sensor malfunction, hydraulic pressure drop, danger. The aircraft began to yaw violently, pulling sharply to the left, threatening to leave the runway pavement at high velocity. Panic surged through Ava. Her training dictated an immediate abort, hauling the stick back to stabilize. A maneuver that, while standard, was too slow for the current high-speed turbulence and could rip the already compromised wing structure. Ethan's hand appeared instantly, covering hers, stopping her movement. His touch was light, yet absolute in its authority. "Don't. You'll force the aircraft into the crosswind stream and risk structural failure. Maintain neutral stick." He didn't shout. He spoke with the calm certainty of someone who had practiced this exact failure simulation thousands of times. Ava froze, stunned into momentary compliance by the sheer force of his composure and the absolute lack of panic in his voice. Ethan didn't wait for her agreement. He acted. He executed a lightning-fast, highly specialized sequence of compensating maneuvers, a series of precise micro-adjustments to the rudder and trims that were textbook senior test pilot procedure for a partial flight control failure. His mind was working at impossible speed, calculating wind velocity, runway remaining, and hydraulic bleed rate. He manually switched the sensor input to the backup tertiary system while simultaneously counteracting the yaw with minimal rudder input. His movements were fluid, perfect, the actions of a master pilot working a deeply familiar machine. In barely 12 seconds, the jet stabilized completely. The warning light blinked off, and the aircraft was once again flying straight and true, roaring into the sky. Ava watched him, her eyes wide with shock, her heart still hammering in her throat. Her body felt cold and weak. Where? Where did you learn that? She stammered breathlessly. That was specialized recovery, Mr. Cole. That required knowledge of the system's deep architecture. Ethan merely glanced at her, his expression returning to his usual detached calm. That, Captain, is the difference between flying and knowing how the aircraft is designed to fail. I've been in this line of work for a long time, longer than you know. After landing, the senior commander, alerted by the tower, met them on the tarmac, along with a team of technicians already swarming the jet. What the hell happened up there? Who handled the malfunction? Hartley or Cole? Ava would not lie. Her pride was broken, but her professional integrity demanded the truth. He did, Commander. Cole identified and handled the failure, saving the aircraft and preventing a ground loop. A stunned silence fell over the assembled flight crew and officials. Disbelief was etched on every face, yet the proof was undeniable. The jet was intact, the crew safe. Ethan offered no explanation. He simply stepped away from the crowd and walked toward the far side of the airfield, a secluded, rarely used zone behind the reserve hangars. Ava, her heart hammering with frantic curiosity and a new terrible suspicion, followed him silently. Her intuition screamed that the true answer was about to be revealed. Ethan stopped at a massive hangar, easily 4 times the size of the maintenance shed where he worked. The hangar was shielded by high-tech security fences and marked only by a small, unassuming plaque. He paused, keyed in a complex biometric code, and the colossal sliding door began to groan open. The gap widened, revealing the contents inside: a gleaming 3-engine private business jet, a Cole Falcon 900LX. It was polished chrome, featuring custom aerodynamic winglets and a subtle dark green and gold trim. This was an ultra-long-range class aircraft, astronomically expensive, owned only by the world's wealthiest individuals or large corporations. The interior, visible through the cabin window, hinted at custom leather and advanced avionics. Ava gasped, unable to utter a sound. She was looking at $80 million worth of private aviation, parked casually behind the base. Ethan turned, meeting her gaze calmly. No hint of triumph or anger, only quiet sincerity. I am not just the co-pilot you refused to fly with, Captain, he stated, his voice ringing with quiet authority. I am the owner of the plane you're looking at right now, and I am the pilot who signed off on its final test flight certification. He then explained his past, the pieces of his life clicking into place. He was indeed a senior test pilot, having worked for his family's aviation investment group. The Cole name was synonymous with global aviation infrastructure. After his wife's death, he made the deliberate choice to step down from the public-facing, high-travel executive role. He was the literal heir and owner. He had taken the maintenance job in the reservist flight hours, only to remain grounded, physically present for Liam, and to teach his son the value of honest, dirty work. He wanted Liam to grow up appreciating labor, not worshiping wealth. As if on cue, the group of curious pilots who had followed Ava ran up, only to freeze when they saw the name, the jet, and the official registration documents clearly visible near the hangar door. Lieutenant Reynolds, the young pilot who had snickered earlier, stammered, his face white with immediate crushing shame. You own this private airfield? The Falcon? Ethan's reply was gentle, but devastating. I was never poor, but I choose not to show it. I prefer being judged on my character, not my collateral. Ava stood still, the realization of her error a cold weight in her stomach. She looked at the polished chrome of the jet, then back at Ethan's oil-stained hands and worn boots. The contrast was a painful lesson in prejudice. She spoke the words that hung in the air for everyone to hear. If I had known this, Mr. Cole, I would have been ashamed of how I treated you, and I owe you my life for the save just now. Ethan softened slightly but did not let her off the hook completely. I don't need your apology for my bank account, Captain Hartley. I only need it because my son had to hear you and your team speak poorly of his father. That is the only thing that matters. His words that he cared only for his son's dignity struck Ava to her core, reaching the deepest, most vulnerable point of her professional pride and personal shame. She saw that his commitment to Liam wasn't a distraction, it was the foundation of his immense focus. From that day forward, the dynamic between Ava and Ethan underwent a profound, undeniable transformation. Ava initiated the change. The following day, she began by formally apologizing to Ethan in private, a stiff but honest admission of her prejudice, acknowledging the depth of her error and the trauma that had fueled it. She offered to work with him daily on aircraft checks, seeking to understand his unique blend of engineering and flight mastery. Ethan, in return, was unexpectedly patient, warm, and utterly contrary to the image the crew had created for him. He explained complex systems with the clarity of a dedicated teacher. He showed her the value of getting her hands dirty, teaching her to feel the small vibrations of an engine that charts could never capture. Liam, sensing the shift, instantly warmed to Ava. The boy would run to her, throwing his arms around her legs in a spontaneous hug. "Miss Ava, my daddy is a super pilot. He made the engine go quiet," he'd proudly exclaim. Ava would laugh, a genuine, unburdened sound she hadn't made in years, gently ruffling the boy's hair. The first time she allowed herself a moment of softness and connection since her traumatic loss. Ava started frequenting the massive Cole Falcon 900LX hangar, not out of curiosity for the wealth, but to learn. Ethan, recognizing her commitment, began teaching her advanced flying techniques and maintenance skills, the secrets of a test pilot. He taught her how to anticipate failure, not just react to it. In the vast, quiet space of the hangar, away from the judgmental eyes of the base, their working relationship deepened into genuine connection. The other pilots, shamed into silence, could only watch as Ava, the invincible Captain Hartley, spent her evenings with the man they had mocked, learning from him, respecting him. Ava deliberately started to wear her new realization openly. She no longer saw Ethan's worn boots as a sign of poverty, but as a symbol of his deliberate commitment to humility and hard work. One peaceful evening, the three of them sat beneath the massive wing of the Falcon jet, the enormous aircraft providing a surreal, protective canopy. They were sharing a cardboard box of cheap takeout pizza, a deliberate choice over expensive dining. They watched the orange glow of the sunset flood the hangar. The scene was utterly incongruous. A billionaire's plane, a world-class pilot, and simple pizza. But it felt right. Ava sighed, a deep, relaxed breath. "I've never had a life like this," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "I've only ever had a career." Ethan smiled, his eyes on Liam, who was happily chasing hangar shadows. "Peace comes from the small things, Ava. The things you can hold on to, not the things you have to prove." That evening, Ava finally opened up. She told Ethan the full story about the co-pilot who lost concentration and the friend she lost. Ethan listened silently without judgment, simply offering the quiet space she needed to heal. He didn't offer advice, he offered understanding. He recognized that her rigidity was just fear wearing a mask of discipline. Over many shared afternoons of work and practice, Ava realized Ethan was the only person in her career she could trust implicitly in the cockpit. His focus was absolute, his actions driven not by money or ambition, but by the same fierce, protective dedication he had for his son. She saw that personal baggage wasn't a liability. In Ethan's case, his profound commitment to Liam was his ultimate strength, providing him with a singular, unshakable grounding. Liam's innocent eye captured their connection perfectly. He presented Ava with a new drawing. 3 stick figures, the man, the woman, and the boy, standing beside the Falcon, beneath a giant, smiling sun. In the drawing, Ava was holding Ethan's hand. Ava looked at the drawing, a gentle, tender feeling stirring in her heart, a feeling she couldn't name but desperately wanted to keep. The act closed with Ava making a tentative, vulnerable request. a mirror of Ethan's hidden commitment to his family. "If you two don't mind the trouble," she said softly, looking from Liam's smiling face to Ethan's calm eyes. "I'd like to stay around longer. I feel more focused here than I have in years." One busy morning, the flight team was called to an emergency meeting. The commander announced a crucial structural change. Ava Hartley was being formally appointed as the permanent chief pilot of the facility's new elite rapid response squadron. The position required her to select one fixed co-pilot. The entire room buzzed with anticipation. Everyone assumed she would choose the most aggressive, highest-ranking pilot available. Certainly not the single-dad maintenance technician, even if he did own a private jet. They expected her to prioritize status and rank. Ava stood straight, meeting the expectant gazes of the entire room. She waited for the murmurs to subside, then cut the tension with a single clear statement. "I choose Ethan Cole." The room exploded in shocked whispers. Lieutenant Reynolds was the first to object, leaping to his feet. "Commander, he's merely a technician. His rank doesn't qualify him for this level of flight command." Ava stepped forward, her military bearing perfect, her voice resonant with conviction and logic. "His rank is irrelevant. He is a senior flight test pilot, qualified for systems and recoveries that are beyond the scope of this entire squadron's training. Furthermore, he is the only pilot here whose focus is absolute, because he has something real to fly home to. He is the pilot I trust most." Ethan, waiting just outside the briefing room with Liam, heard every single word. His breath hitched. He was completely overwhelmed, his eyes stinging with sudden, unexpected tears. He finally had his professional validation, delivered by the person who had once been his fiercest critic. When Ava exited the room, walking away from the chaos her decision had created, she found Ethan waiting. He took a steadying breath, his usual calm momentarily broken. Ava stepped toward him, the confidence of the boardroom softening into something deeply personal. She didn't speak of flying. She spoke of permanence. "If you accept this partnership," she said, her voice low and filled with hope, "I want to fly with you for life, in the cockpit and outside of it." Ethan smiled, a slow, genuine curve of his lips. "I had a plan, Ava, a simple life. And then you happened." He paused, looking down at his son. "I will only accept if Liam agrees to share his dad with a chief pilot." Liam, understanding the gravity of the moment through the emotion in their voices, rushed forward, wrapping his arms fiercely around both of them. "I agree. We can be a super flying family. Monty!" he shouted joyfully. The two adults laughed, a sound of relief and shared happiness, under the late morning sun. The weight of their past prejudices, the burden of their hidden lives, had finally lifted. Later, in the vast quiet of the Falcon 900LX hangar, the polished metal of the private jet reflected the golden light of the afternoon. It stood as a silent witness to their journey, a monument to the worth found not in ownership, but in character. Ava took Ethan's hand, lacing her fingers with his calloused, grease-stained ones. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. "Thank you for teaching me that the best co-pilot is the one who has something worth fighting for. Thank you for not letting me fly alone anymore." Ethan squeezed her hand gently, looking at his new family, his quiet life now complete. "No one," he replied, his voice soft with promise. "No one was ever meant to fly alone forever. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to my stories."